Tuesday. Monday, March the 10th, DC Department of Transportation was out there on 16th Street, right in front of the White House, because there's a 2-block section that had been closed to traffic in 2020 in the aftermath of the George Floyd uprisings that were happening across the country. In fact, here in DC, there were a number of people who also were murdered by police that year, including Karan Hilton Brown. The cops that killed him were convicted, at least one of them was, of second-degree murder. And these are the punk-ass police that Trump pardoned. So 2020 was a lot. And in response to everything that was happening that summer, in response to the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, tragically, liberal Democratic politicians were doing these symbolic gestures, as was the corporations. We're gonna increase our diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and initiatives. We're gonna do DEI. We're gonna. And these Democratic elected officials were doing something similar, taking down the Confederate statues, et cetera, et cetera. And Muriel Bowser, who is the mayor of DC, designated 2 blocks of 16th Street as Black Lives Matter Plaza, where an artist was commissioned to paint these giant letters, Black Lives Matter. It was a meeting space for protesters, activists, organizers, especially when the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, came to DC, terrorized the city and its residents. And this was before January 6th, by the way. And Black Lives Matter Plaza was a rallying point for city residents and people that were coming to support Black people in the DC area. But last week, Thursday, so Monday was the motherfucking 10th, 9, 8, 7, 6. Thursday the 6th, we're going to play a clip because the week of March the 6th, the city of DC was threatened by a GOP House member, threatened to pull federal funding for the district if the district didn't change the name of Black Lives Matter Plaza to Liberty Plaza. Wrote this down, okay? The congressperson did. Proposed this. And Muriel Bowser was asked about it. And I want us to hear some comments. But first, what we're going to hear is from the Black woman artist who actually installed the artwork for Black Lives Matter Plaza. And this was the pulse and this was the scene of the day, Monday the 10th, when Black Lives Matter Plaza came down in Washington, D.C. Let's take a listen.
That story is never going to be washed away. It will forever be with us.
A poignant moment for Kiana Jones as she looks at her work at Black Lives Matter Plaza.
It's bittersweet, right?
She painted the 2-block stretch on 16th Street Northwest in June 2020. The space was created after the death of George Floyd as a place for both protests and healing.
That's what art is about. It's about creating. It's about having hard conversations, and you can create again. So it's never gone forever.
In a statement on Tuesday, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said the district will paint over the mural that stands 1 block from the White House. Today, she explained why.
We have bigger fish to fry than fights over what has been very important to us and to their history, and especially in our ability to keep our city safe during that time. That mural played a very important part.
Kiana, who is a Southeast D.C. native, understands the mayor's decision.
People have been losing jobs. There have been budget cuts. There's been a lot that's been going on. And to have to fight for this and potentially lose a lot of funding that we definitely need right now, I understand that we have to make a choice, and sometimes art may not be it.
So at this moment, Kiana is choosing to reflect on the impact that her work made.
It speaks for itself. People travel the world to see this.
Including civil rights leader and former Georgia Congressman John Lewis, who made his last public appearance at Black Lives Matter Plaza in June 2020 before he died 1 month later.
It's a moment in history that can't be erased. I'm so honored and grateful to be a part.
She says while her work may be washed away physically, it will always be a part of her spirit that she leaves in her hometown.
Yeah, it can't be washed out. Exactly. Can't wash me out, baby.
As for what the new name will be, part of Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde's bill calls for the new name to be Liberty Plaza. When asked about it today, Mayor Bowser simply said she does not support the congressman's bill. At Black Lives Matter Plaza, I'm Melissa Kim, WUSA 9.
Thanks, Melissa. So you guys saw it there. So you heard from the artists, you heard from some residents, you heard that clip from DC Mayor Muriel Bowser when asked about, I can only assume she was asked whether she would fight or even refuse to change the name or to remove Black Lives Matter from the plaza on 16th Street. And what did Mayor Muriel Bowser say? She said, "We have bigger fish to fry. We have to focus on protecting the city." What she means by that is federal funding for DC has been threatened. Home rule for DC has been threatened by the Trump administration and by the GOP Congress. But may I just let me stick this in here real quick, okay? DC's autonomy, DC's ability to lead and govern itself, because DC, just for y'all that don't know, the District of Columbia operates a little different, okay? For all intents and purposes, DC is a fucking city and a state at the same time. DC residents pay federal taxes. They also pay District of Columbia taxes, okay? Everything that Washington has, its police department, its school system, its public services are funded by DC resident dollars, DC tax dollars. This is not a federal funding endeavor. DC is not funded by the federal government. No, DC collects and levies taxes on its residents and pays for all of its shit on its own, okay? But the funding that DC does get involves, like, for example, DC does require federal funding for big events such as inauguration. When heads of state come to the city, DC and the Secret Service usually provide security. So there are functions that the city of Washington provides for the federal government, and the federal government does some reimbursement, okay? But to be clear, DC by and large pays for itself by itself, and Washington residents do not have any voting members in Congress. They have Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is a delegate, but she does not have any voting powers in the House of Representatives. So if you ever come to Washington, D.C., and you see the license plates that say taxation without representation, that's exactly what that means, okay? D.C. residents are second-class citizens, basically, in the United States, okay? So when Muriel Bowser says, I have to protect the security of the city, she means she's trying to hold on to the federal funding or that DC does get. And by the way, Congress can approve or disapprove DC's budget. They have a lot of control over DC. And by the way, just as a set aside, a footnote, under the Biden administration, the DC City Council passed a bill, a crime reform bill, to reform the DC criminal code. And under President Joe Biden, a Democrat, yes, a Democrat, refused that, did not allow the DC City Council, who was elected by the voters of Washington, to enact their own law and to change their own criminal code. Okay, so it is not only Trump, but it's also Democrats when they get in office. They kneecap Washington, DC, and its ability to govern itself and to determine its own laws. Okay, so I just want to be clear about that. DC gets fucked by Democrats and Republicans alike. But Muriel Bowser, in my opinion, preemptively bent the knee when it came to Black Lives Matter Plaza, because the art installation was put there when Trump was fucking president, right? So it wasn't like she did it to be a thorn in the side of Donald Trump. She was ready to be a resistor then. But now she capitulated early because she doesn't want to fuck up DC's budget, DC's this, DC's that. Okay. That was last week. Okay. That was March the 6th. Let me take you to March the 10th. Let me take you to March the 10th, because what was going on? The federal government is in jeopardy of shutting down because the Republicans, who are in control of both chambers of Congress, cannot fucking find their ass with a goddamn flashlight in the hot sun. They were really having a hard time passing a budget. And so, as part of the continuing resolution to keep the government funded, to basically keep the federal government open, a provision was added in the House version of the continuing resolution to basically withhold $1.1 billion of funding from the District of Columbia. What does that mean? Again, it's $1 billion of the district's money, not the federal government's money, but because the district requires its budgets to be approved by Congress, they still have to go to Congress hat in hand. Massa, can you please approve our budget for fiscal year 2025? Massa, please. Massa, please. I know this is our money, Massa, but we need y'all to say yes. And because this piss poor ass fucking incompetent Congress can't pass a new budget, Washington is relying on its previous fiscal year numbers. So it's a little convoluted and complicated, but the long and the short of it is Muriel Bowser agreed to take down Black Lives Matter Plaza, and the district is now being screwed out of $1 billion in funding anyway. Anyway. Why did you comply? Oh, because you had bigger fish to fry. You had to worry about the funding. Well, they fucked your funding anyway. Hold on, let me play the clip because I'm about to get upset. I want y'all to take a look at this story. Oh, because it's a story. Because again, even the news evolved a little bit tonight before we came on the air, because the Congress was able to pass a continuing resolution, and DC is now going to be officially screwed out of $1.1 billion. But we'll go ahead and run the package, please.
Tonight, D.C. could lose more than $1 billion in its current budget by the end of this week if Congress approves the current funding bill on the table. And today, D.C. leaders went to Capitol Hill to try to stop this. 7 News' Christian Flores is live for us on the Hill. So, Christian, the big question tonight, how is Congress able to do this?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. First, Congress always has final approval over all of DC's budgets, but also they folded this budget into their spending bill that they actually need to pass before the end of this week to avert a government shutdown. Now, this latest version cuts around $1.1 billion out of the DC budget. Now, earlier today, a group of DC council members and Mayor Bowser went to Capitol Hill, even visiting House Speaker Mike Johnson's office to try to get Congress to reverse course. And here's a twist that has city leaders very concerned. Those cuts are not for future budgets. It's for this current budget. We're already halfway through the year, meaning the city has already spent half of their budget. This means DC has a smaller pool of money to cut from in order to achieve this funding reduction. Officials are already estimating they will need to cut tens of millions of dollars from the police and fire departments, schools, DC Water, and more than $200 million for Metro. Now, we're still awaiting a vote on this stopgap spending bill, but this proposed slashing of DC's budget comes as the city is facing a massive deficit. Well, Mayor, what would you say to a member of Congress who says that this spending reduction would be necessary given the $1 billion deficit forecasted over the next 3 years?
We have an upcoming budget process that will address any spending pressures. We're in that process right now. In about 3 weeks, I'm scheduled to send a balanced budget to the Council of the District of Columbia. And it will be balanced, and it will represent the forecast that our CFO has.
I also asked Mayor Bowser what these cuts could mean for future budgets, as well as if this could actually jeopardize the possibility of a new NFL stadium at the old RFK Stadium grounds. You'll hear what she has to say tonight at 11 on 7 News. Reporting live.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, I appreciate the DC local media focusing on the stories that matter. Will the NFL stadium funding be affected? And I just want to be beamed off the planet. Really, that's the concern. Let me tell you what is included in cutting $1 billion from DC's budget. on the upside, it includes about a $75 million cut in the Metropolitan Police Department budget. Yay. It does mean the cops are probably not going to get paid a lot of overtime, which, hey, could be good news for city residents and people coming to visit DC this summer, because it means, you may not have cops fucking bothering you when the club let out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because I'm saying they're not getting paid no fucking overtime. So we may not see a whole lot of polices on the streets this summer. That should be interesting. But also Health and Human Services, DC Public Health, DC Water is going to feel $51 million worth of cuts because of this absence of $1 billion from the DC budget. And I just have to laugh at some of these goofy liberal elected Democrats, the black ones, especially. Let me laugh at the black ones, because you had all the smoke for Trump in the first term. You had all the smoke for Trump when he was running for president. Fascism. We have to stop fascism. We have to protect and defend democracy. Okay. Let's say democracy got defeated in November 2024. So y'all just going to capitulate and roll over to the fascism in order to go along to get along, right? You're going to preemptively comply or comply upon the first ask, right? Because what? You think you're saving yourself? You think if you obey in advance that somehow you'll be spared? That's not how tyranny works. That's not how fascism works. In fact, they know that those that obey even before being asked, or those that obey upon the first request, y'all are the weakest. You're the easiest to manipulate. You're the easiest to comply. And you did, and Muriel Bowser complied, and for what? She gave the crackers what they wanted. They hated, when I say they, the GOP lawmakers, Trump and his White House staff, I can imagine, hated having to see Black Lives Matter painted big and bold as day right outside the White House. Hated that shit. I'm sure Trump said, I'm working on that day one. I'm sure in the back of his mind, that was absolutely one of his priorities. And the Georgia Republican congressperson made it official by putting it, as a provision to be considered as part of the House continuing resolution budget. And look at what they got these goofy black Democrats to do, to go ahead and erase what was a historical memorial marker of a period of Black uprising, not only in the district, but across the country. And these Black Democrats are not going to be the ones to save us. They're not going to be the ones to protect us. They're not going to be the ones to defend us in any way, because they are all go along to get along ass niggas, okay? They want to make sure that their position is secure, will be secured in the future. I'm sure Muriel Bowser, once she leaves office, because I think this is her last term, no question, she's got a cushy K Street job waiting for her somewhere, and she's got to make sure that that's secured and lined up. So she needs to make sure that she plays the game to help secure her own future. And you know what that means? That means she's not interested in securing our future. Okay, that means she's not interested in doing things that actually support and uplift and strengthen the community and strengthen the resistance to white nationalism, which is overt, it is blatant, it is in our face right now. And if Muriel Bowser figured that she could curry a little favor with Donald Trump by erasing the Black Lives Matter Plaza that she created, by the way, because in her words, she has bigger fish to fry. You did that, and for what? To still lose $1 billion from the budget. $1 billion of DC's own money again. The clownery. You hate to see it and you love to see it at the same time.